So I came from a professional sports background, but also had done a degree in engineering. So I had a mind that was very much used to and interested in kind of dismantling things, putting them back together, and used to do that, with my own biomechanics, kind of working out how to get the best out of my own body when I was playing football, and equally very interested in how my mindset affected my performance and the performance of people around me. I had a bit of a minor back problem myself, which did actually, affect my confidence for a while, and then I went to an amazing massage therapist, had one treatment, and just kind of, fell in love with the whole practice, and decided I was going to train in massage, but very quickly realised that just treating the body on its own would put a lid on the kind of results I could produce. So I got really interested in how I might be able to engage the client on a mental level, which sometimes was just as simple as asking them to think about a particular part of life or a particular idea, or remember a past event, or consider something in the future. There's something that happens with contact that allows the physiological systems to calm, that allows stress to be released, and it's almost on an unconscious level. But when somebody has a skilled massage, the therapist is effectively encouraging the body to release its tension, and a muscle that's tense is sending information to the brain all the time. And when the muscle relaxes, that information diminishes. So effectively, a tense person's overloading their mind, and a relaxed person then has much less for the mind to try and process, because the mind will process it to see if it's useful or not. A lot of the times it isn't. And that in itself allows the mind and the body simultaneously to calm, which I believe, in my personal experience of having therapy, just completely alters your experience of yourself and of your surroundings, actually. In developing the work that I do, I looked both from a Western perspective, and I looked into some of the more Eastern philosophies. So on the Western side, I considered things like body language, but also studied advanced anatomy and physiology, and really got into understanding how groups of muscles work opposing each other and work together, and then also looked at things like theories about how trauma is held in particular structures in the body. And then from an Eastern point of view, I got really interested in both two major subjects: traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, the kind of Indian philosophy of health and well-being, which both talk about the mind, the emotional state, and the body being really one. So certain organs holding particular emotions, or particular structures in the body, often called chakras, being energy centers that can transmit energy into an environment or between people, or can absorb particular energies, whether it's a thought or whether it's an emotional state. Human beings tend to make things black and white, almost like an on or off switch. So you're either ill or you're well. And I don't really consider that as a continuum. And I think mental health is very similar. So firstly, a lot of the times when people talk about mental health, what they're really talking about is mental illness. Well, that's what they're thinking about or worrying about. Like, is there something wrong with me? And it's so prevailing as a context, like a place that people think about their life. They wake up and they've got a pain in their knee. It's like, oh my God, am I going to have a knee replacement? Or they get a pain in their torso, and they suddenly are worrying about a really terrible, life-threatening illness. Rather than looking at it like I'm either sane or I'm insane, is to kind of take a look at the ways that you think, and bring peace to where your thinking is very obviously not governed by logic, not governed by rationale, driven more by emotion or preference or past, that's not really relevant anymore, or the future that might never happen, and give yourself some freedom to not have to be, some kind of machine, really, and like always be processing things purely based on evidence or rationale. In my therapy sessions, my clients are in an environment where there isn't anything inherently to be afraid of. So they know that if fear comes up, it's got to be some kind of past base, almost like an echo. The body's remembering something, or a projection, the body's anticipating something in advance that isn't actually happening yet. And if you sit with that, you actually start to be able to allow yourself to kind of free yourself from the grip of it, like it's still there, but you then can start to locate inside of it where the source might be or where specific areas might be that are really driving that fear. What my experience has been, once you start to understand what the key concern is that's causing the fear, then you can start to look at it and go, well, is that valid? Is there anything I can do about that? Is that even mine? Is that a fear that's been passed on to me by someone or something else? Is that relevant today? And a lot of that kind of separating out the layers of it and locating it in time and space and owning it if it's personal and disowning it if it's not personal, I find can dramatically reduce the amount of fear that people are experiencing. The mind is an extraordinarily powerful tool. And if you apply a really powerful tool, it gets more powerful. And if you then, and then what a lot of people do is they immediately go to their mind, but they go to it in a very specific way. So I do a lot of encouraging my clients to look at the different ways that you can think and perceive and engage mentally with life, rather than just seeking out evidence and then deciding that you have a particular perspective or view that's right and true. Considering things like wonder. Like what else might there be? Like speculation. Equally, being very mindful to be aware that perception is imperfect. None of us has perfect senses. And it's very easy to receive some piece of information, assume that you've got it completely correct, and then be quite impacted when you find out that actually you were wrong. And the mind takes that very badly, especially if it's a piece of information that's inaccurate, because it almost defines itself by its strength. And I do see signs of it as well, as encouraging people to use different aspects of their mental capacity, and even things like intuition and gut instinct, being able to be quiet enough, like I was talking about those sacred moments and those spaces that are quiet, is then tuning into that part of thinking that's more about being aware of the bigger picture, tuning in on a moment by moment level, not a process and analysis perspective. And I've been finding just extraordinary results happening for me where I trust my intuition or my gut instinct. Sometimes that's asking a question where I wouldn't normally ask it, or even turning down a road when I wouldn't normally turn down that road. For me, I wouldn't go so far as to say I understand how that works, but I do believe that there's a level of consciousness that once you get beyond and analysing things from an individual perspective, actually can bring an individual more into harmony with their environment, allows them to be able to really empathise and connect with other individuals, but equally sometimes to be able to detach, because sometimes emotional or mental health is about being able to keep a distance from something that's happening, rather than absorbing somebody else's suffering or anxiety or situation that you can't do anything about. I think a lot of mental wellness and a lot of restrictions that people find in life is because they've made a decision or they've taken an action in the heat of the moment, and then they feel like they have to stick to it. So being able to take some time sometimes to step out of a powerful emotional experience, and actually then, when there's calm, when there's stillness or there's space, then to start to consider it. But equally also to limit the amount of time you do that. Because I think some people don't sleep at night because they spend hours and hours doing it. I think there's value in saying, okay, well, I'm going to spend half an hour, really considering this and almost literally timing it. So you're the one who is stepping into the experience and stepping out of it. And that gives you a real confidence that you're not going to be stuck in it forever. I think one of the things that I find very important is to have people be clear that there's not an age where you stop growing. There's not an age where you stop developing your mind, and equally, there's not an age where your body has to then start to deteriorate and decompose before you die. And I think a lot of mental health issues come from people then deciding that, okay, I've now learned everything I'm going to learn, and then kind of ring fencing themselves and going, this is who I am now, and I'm not really going to grow and develop and inquire and wonder. And I think a lot of the times that builds almost like a pressure inside the mind, and it starts to spill over the edges. So to encourage people to, think outside of the box, to examine firmly held beliefs that they normally don't question, to spend time with different groups of people, to spend time with people who are significant, like the next generation beyond you, and equally the generation following you, if you like, and really get interested, even if you're not interested, in how they're thinking, because it forces your mind to be flexible, forces your mind to consider things from perspectives you wouldn't consider. And just that in its own right, I believe, will promote and encourage mental health.